So the first point is to try to see what is politics. Politics has a bad image because it's very often the reason of corruption and a lot of bad things that we don't like. But politics is absolutely necessary. We cannot do without politics. We need responsible people who can take decisions at the level of a city or of a country, and this we have to choose them with justice, with wisdom, and the only way we have to have this politics going on is the system that we call democracy, which means the vote by the whole population to choose someone freely, to express the way that we want our country or our city to be managed. So this is politics. I will talk about democracy as the sort of politics that we need. In the time of election, there will be a big debate on the projects of the society, projects that we want. Either there could be project more conservative, which will insist on freedom and on security, for instance, or project which would be more on the left toward solidarity, toward justice for all. So we can see that there are many different options in politics in the time of election. This the responsible people that we are going to elect are not the only one who are important on the scene. There are also what we call counter powers. Those counter powers, they are the press, the unions, the NGOs, all what we call in the church language intermediary bodies. So it's important to discuss democracy and politics, but also there's other ways that elections to be active on the scene of politics, which are precisely all the counter powers and these intermediary bodies. But politics is important, and the debate is necessary all the time to avoid conflict and to avoid violent conflict. That's why we go through the speech, through debates and explanation and vote in an assembly, and this is the way that politics can express itself. Now there may be some points on these topics of politics that we have to see briefly. First, republic or monarchy. There's two different things there. Is it more democratic to be in a republic or not? In fact, not. We can see we have monarchy like the Queen of England or something like this, where you have a democracy which is really working. So the point here is not that it's a republic or a monarchy, but it's a way of electing an assembly, and then this assembly will make freely the law. So this is a point of free expression, free elections. That's the democracy. And it's not a question of republic or monarchy. Now, what is the purpose of political life? The purpose of political life, this is to elaborate a program which is trying to put together what we call the common good. The common good. This is a very important expression for the church and for our tradition when we talk about politics. Common good. Common good does not give you a specific program. It does not tell you exactly what to do, but it's a sort of moral orientation, meaning that whatever you do, you should ask yourself, is this for the common good, or what I do is it something which goes just for my personal interest? So the question is very much personal interest against common good. And the purpose of politics is precisely to work for common good, to have decisions which will go along that idea of common good. Now, the problem is that many citizens are not interested into common good. They are interested in their own power. They are interested in their personal goods. They want to get more money, more leisure, and it's generally the private interest which lead people in their public life. So very often, many people are not interested in politics. And we can see that at the time of election, many people are not voting, although the vote is very important for the choice that we want for the future of our country. And the state has a very important role in this elaboration of common good, because the state can force economic actors to work for the common good and not just for their own interest. And this is true for persons and for enterprises. The state can have a role to force them to live for the common good. Now, for instance, taxes are important for the common good. We have to pay taxes if we want the state to work for the community. If we want the state to work for the health program all over the country, we have to pay taxes. But we have also to demand the state and to ask the state to work for the development of health in the country. Take another problem, the problem of garbage in a city. This is the common good of the city, to have a good system of garbage. Otherwise, the city would be very dirty. And one other issue is the issue of environment and nature. We see how the development in many countries destroyed nature by the pollution of air, by the destruction of forests. I think of the Philippines. Philippines had 90% of forest all over the territory. That was a century ago. Now it has only 10%. And because the state has never done anything just to protect the forest, and private interest destroyed the forest in many, many countries. So there is a real public common good to defend on those issues of pollution, destruction of the forest, and so on. Also the quality of water, also the limitation of global warming. This is typically the many measures that the state could take in order to work for the common good. So politics, and when we vote for election, we have to look at all those subjects which are important for the communities, and problems like also on the working system, style of life, environment, migration, and all that. All this is part of politics. Now, another question in politics is our citizenship, our belonging as a citizen to a country. We know that we form a big community in a country of millions of people. But the question is, how do we really feel member of that community? Or do we only think that we just work for ourselves and that we should be careful of ourselves? Like generally, very often in Europe and in the States, they are very individualistic, and they generally work strictly for for themselves. The sense of belonging to a big community is much more not as strong as it is in other countries, like in Asia or in Japan or other countries like that. The sense of belonging is much stronger. And we saw that here, for instance, about the vaccine against coronavirus. We saw people who are trying to fight vaccine for the argument of freedom. They want to be free, but the problem is that they did not understand that the vaccine is an instrument of public health, and that the state has to organize vaccination of all, because this is a security for everybody. This is a way of defending health for everybody. So it depends very much on the sense of belonging. If we belong to a community, we are ready personally to do things for the community, and for instance, to accept vaccination for us because of the defense of health in the country. Now, if I come to politics more closer to Christian faith, I have to quote a small sentence from Pius XI, which said in 1927, he said this: politics is the highest form of charity, because politics is looking for common good. So I think this small formula is a good summary of what the church thinks in politics. Politics is the highest form of charity because it looks for common good. We are here at the heart of the place of Christian in politics. And we have to understand that charity is not a sort of personal activity. It has to be also a collective activity, and an activity which will go through institutions and also through political institutions. If we have politics which are really working for all and for the most poor of our country, we really work for charity and attention to the poor in the country. So the formula of Pius XI are giving us a key for politics. This is common good. So I think Christians are really invited to go from a sort of individual charity to a collective action, thinking that politics is really the work for charity at the collective level. So in this area of church and politics, we could wonder about the relation between the church and the state. And we could be, if we say that Christians have to get involved into politics, we would, do we think that they should impose a Christian vision to politics? That's a big issue. Should they work for the state to apply Christian vision? So that's a debate. The point is that the Christians have to go through the national debate as it exists in the National Assembly. So they have to push their own agenda in the National Assembly. That's clear. But they cannot impose the Christian law to everyone in the country, because all citizens are not systematically Christian. So they are allowed to live according to their own motivations. So the question is how the debate is going on in the National Assembly, so that this assembly can hear all the points of view, and particularly points of view of Christians, but also other religious people, so that they decide after a debate and according to the vote that they may have in the national parliament. So we Christians have to say their word in the national politics, but they cannot impose a Christian politics to all, because we do not want Muslims to impose a Muslim politics to all. So it's the same for us. We don't have to impose our Christian politics to all. We have to discuss, to explain, and after that we have to leave the vote going on as a system, as a democratic system. Now, for the Christians, we have a good tradition in political involvement. We have sources of inspiration. The first is obviously the gospel. So we should read the gospel, meditate the gospel, and see what type of values we can apply in politics through the gospel. And the second point of inspiration is the social doctrine of the church. This is the whole area of values which can be used to practice in politics. And we should make, and Tanya, we should make another debate on the social doctrine of the church, because there's a lot of things to say about that. And the Pope Francis has been very active in this area on the two encyclicals that you know, Laudato Si for the environment, Fratelli Tutti on fraternity. So I think we have a very important text which we can really meditate, because they are central for the church and they can be used directly in politics. That's for my first point. My second point, which will be a little shorter, is that some attitude that we can have and that we have to discuss. And this is typically the object of discernment. We have to discern what can be my attitude when I speak about politics. Now, it depends if we speak about just my interest for the elections, so I have to get involved into elections, or if I speak about a full-time job in politics, and that's something else. This is possible. I can get involved in politics as a full-time member for it's a sort of vocation of service of the community. And I would take here an example from the Philippines, because I've been in the Philippines many times. And I met, 30 years ago, I met Dr. Bengson. You remember the Philippines? Dr. Bengson was Minister of Health of Mrs. Aquino. He was a Christian, very, very profound Christian. And he really applied his belief into his work as a Minister of Health. And he changed the face of the city in that gospel, in that respect of health. And in his office, I met him in his office, official office, there was a painting of Christ washing the feet of his apostles in his official office of Minister of Health. And he said to me, this is politics, the service of the most humble and the service of all. And I was very struck by this image of this minister who was really integrating the value of the gospel this way with this picture of Christ. Now let's see three attitudes that we may have in front of politics, and this should be the object of discernment. The first attitude is our interest for private matters. Mm-hmm. If I work this is a big temptation, is to exercise power through politics in order to defend my personal interest. And if I do that, I can easily also, and we see that so often, go toward illegal behavior and temptation of corruption, because I see my personal interest, my private interest, as the reason of politics. this is not acceptable. So we have to think, if we get involved in politics, if this object of discernment is the service of all, or just our own interest. And corruption is everywhere. Corruption is everywhere. We had a minister in France who was Minister of Budget. He was saying to everybody that he would go after the corrupt people. And he was caught himself with his hand in the jelly, you know. He was caught because he had a banking account in Switzerland. He had the banking account in Switzerland, the Minister of Budget. So he was discovered and he was condemned. So that shows something also very important in this point of discernment, is that we need also not only political people, but we need also honest judges, very strong judges who are able to apply the law and go after the criminals, even if they are very high in society. So that's also a responsibility of Christian people, is to go after the criminals. You know, many years ago, they created in Sicilia, where there is a lot of mafia people in Sicilia. Two Jesuits created a school of political formation. And in 30 years, the mafia had to back up in their hand on Sicilia, because many public agents of Sicilia was formed and trained to go against corruption. So there's a lot of work to be done there. Second point of attitude, this is our passivity. Are we really active, or do we just want to remain on the side of the politics because we say this is too complicated, this is a little dirty, my family will have problems and difficulty, I will not have time enough for my family, and so on. All these are good reasons for fearing the work in politics. But and sometimes this is so strong that it puts you in a place of you are passive in front of politics, and you just leave politics to those who are taking the lead. And sometimes you just say, well, let's experts and technocrats do the job. But that's not politics, to leave experts and technocrats. If we had left experts and technocrats, Europe would never have made this association of the European Union. This is because Christians have been at the lead of this European Union, thinking that putting those 27 countries together is more important for peace and development of all than just each country of his own, fighting for his own market and his own wealth. So Europe is the development of Christians who had a strong idea, and they made a choice. And that is today about Ukraine. This allows all Europe to work in order to help Ukraine and receive refugees. Even in Marseille, we received already refugees. They go all over Europe, and they are welcome, and we take care of them. And this is also because Europe is strongly united. The third attitude is anger. Anger. It's true that because it's so difficult to act, and that decision is too slow, we see some citizens who are expressing themselves through the way of anger. They shout or they demonstrate, but it's normal to demonstrate. But there is a sort of violence after demonstration, which is a problem, because this gives a form of politics which will produce more and more violence and not peace and development. And that's a very, very important problem. Now, the anger can go up to the point of revolution, and particularly violent revolution. And we know that all violent revolutions are always followed by a long period of more and more violence. We know that. That's experience. So we should be very careful about violence. The most important revolution, non-violent revolutions, were those who were precisely non-violent. And again, in the Philippines in 1986, they made a beautiful revolution against President Marcos. But that was sort of guarantee that they could go on through democracy, although they have to watch all the time that democracy is really working. Now, my third point, object of discernment, is some danger, some track. We could be tracked by, fall in a track by many issues if we go into politics. There are several dangers. The first danger is through the commitment to a party. We have, when we go into politics, we use a political party because this is the way we have to organize in order to get power. We need a group of people to go together and introduce a program and get elected in the National Assembly. So we need to be part of a political party. So we have to discuss with the political party the program. So there is a discussion in a political party about the program. Now we have to keep our freedom even in the discussion of the program of a party. Because if we don't agree with that program, we can discuss and discuss. But if the party tells us that discussion is over and we cannot express ourselves, we enter into another system, which would be an ideological system where, like Marxist party, where freedom is lost. So there is a debate in the commitment to a party that we should discuss. We should be able to discuss and keep our freedom in that party. Because to a certain point, we have to make the choice. Either we keep the point of view of the party, or if we don't agree, we leave. But there is there is then a problem in the involvement with the party. Are we totally 100% with the party, or do we still keep our freedom with this party? Because the second danger is precisely ideology. The ideology is a complete system of thought which organizes the whole of your existence. We had Marxism, we had the Nazi group with racism, and some way liberalism, when it's becoming an ideology, is a problem because we think about freedom and only about freedom. We have no sense of responsibility, of common good, and attention to the poor. So all those ideological systems are really a problem and problematic. And we should be very careful not to go along those ideological systems, because we lose our freedom. And ideological system is not of the past, it's also of the present, like Daesh or Islamic groups on their own. They are also ideological system. They are a system to express the anger of some people. And this is very dangerous for the peace of themselves and of the world. Now, a third danger is what we would call the desire for notoriety or fame. I want to be famous. I want to be known. Vanity. Very often, people could be taken precisely by vanity, and they go on politics to be on the stage, to be in front of cameras, in front of a microphone. And the temptation of vanity can really take up our desire. And if we go into politics, we should be careful about that, because this is a very dangerous temptation. Now, if a Christian goes to politics, he has to admit, to accept, to be under the camera and the microphone, but he should not live for that. I mean, the point of himself being in politics is the service of others, the service of common good, is not the microphone or the cameras. Now, for a brief conclusion, is to say that Ignatian spirituality is especially useful for Christians who is involved, who want to get involved in politics, because through this Ignatian spirituality, we learn about discernment of our action into the world. Ignatian spirituality teaches us to listen to our motivation. It makes us sensitive to the bad spirit, to our own temptation, for instance, temptation of vanity, personal vanity. So it recalls us the sense of common good. And Ignatian spirituality will teach us how to take a decision, because this is the purpose of discernment. Discernment is not for our own pleasure. Discernment is made in order to take a decision, and we have to use everything that I said before to study them and to meditate them in order to go to the decision. When we have examined all the circumstances, all the aspects, positives or negative, so we can start a decision and enter in that decision. And also, this Ignatian spirituality allows us of praying over the world, over the people that we want to serve, over the choices that we want to make, over the politicians that we are going to elect. So Ignatian spirituality gives us a sense of responsibility, and that's very important, sense of responsibility in the decision that we have to take. So for an Ignatian follower, there are all good reasons to get involved in politics with discernment. Thank you very much.